What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Echo, the latest Marvel Studios TV series, out now in full on Disney Plus. Dropped in a binge drop. All 5 episodes were released. And yeah, it's the latest series. I think this is notable for a lot of reasons, coming at an interesting time for Marvel, as we've been talking about ad nauseum. Echo was dubbed the first Marvel Spotlight title from the MCU, namely a series or film that you don't really have any need to watch previous MCU properties to understand, which is, I think, in practice, a smart idea to introduce because the MCU is so daunting with, 33 some odd movies, 8 TV series. We've seen a lot at this point, so I guess that idea makes sense. Now, I don't think it's actually that applicable to Echo, though. And that's kind of odd to me, and we can get into that. But yeah, I mean, this series was supposed to come out in November, got delayed, and we have a lot of credible reporting about the troubled production, or at least troubled development with Echo. And I think, on one hand, this is probably the last product of a bygone era at the MCU, honestly, where they kind of realized finally that you actually do need a traditional showrunner. And Marvel trying to do a new model of TV development wasn't really working. So, take that for what you will. But yeah, this was a series that at one point was going to have more episodes, but they did a 5-episode binge drop beginning of January, really just to kind of feels like get this out of the way and move the heck on. And now the Marvel calendar is empty until the end of July when Deadpool 3 comes out, and lots riding on that, as we know. But yeah, I think with Echo, it doesn't really serve the Marvel Spotlight brand all too well, because this is a supporting character introduced in the Hawkeye 2021 Disney Plus series, and it makes a lot of references in its first episode to the events of Hawkeye, as well as the backstory to Echo, aka Maya Lopez, played by Alaqua Cox. And Echo the series, like Hawkeye, reintroduces or brings back, keeps it going, Kingpin, aka Wilson Fisk, as portrayed by Vincent D'Onofrio. And yes, you don't need to have previously watched the Netflix Daredevil run, where D'Onofrio originated this take on the character. You don't need to watch that, but I feel like the Hawkeye stuff is kind of important to this. And also, this is a series that's clearly doing a lot of setup and legwork to set up future stuff. Namely, I'd imagine Daredevil Born Again, the series that is being completely reworked over at Marvel again due to development issues. And, you get Kingpin back. You see Jeremy Renner, both in Hawkeye, the series, flashback, reusing of scenes, as well as I think there's that one scene in the premiere that's new. We also get to see Charlie Cox's Daredevil in a pretty good fight scene also show back up. So it's not the most self-contained thing. It's certainly less self-contained than, say, Marvel's Moon Knight, which is truly a Marvel Spotlight brand, in my opinion. Nonetheless, that's just semantics. I think this is a show that it's just okay. I wasn't offended by it, but I also didn't love it either. You can kind of tell it was a bit stitched together and, tried to put it together. And, I think it's, like I said, I think it's just all right. And I think a big issue with Echo is, the Echo character, which is a new character, and Cox is a new performer as an actor. Ultimately, it just feels like a bit of a side character because it's only been on TV to this point. I don't know if there's a lot of audience hype or investment for this, and I think the true heads that are really into Kingpin are going to be probably more interested in what's to follow with Daredevil. I don't know. Now, I think what's really good about Echo is that the Echo character, as established in the comics, is both a deaf character as well as a Native American indigenous character. And the way that's portrayed on the Echo series is not pandering or checking a box in any way. I think it's actually done to real genuine effect. American Sign Language, ASL, is a huge part of this series, but how it factors into the plot when it's convenient for characters to get around bad guys, but also the connection between Echo and her other relationships, I think it's actually like done in a really good way. And of course, this series taking place primarily in Oklahoma on the Choctaw Reservation really feels, I think, culturally ingrained into that, like, modern day indigenous experience. And again, I don't feel like it's pandering. I think it actually does it in a pretty effective manner. It also helps that you have kind of a murderer's row of like known indigenous actors, with Graham Greene and Tantu Cardinal, two native legends in terms of actors, playing Echo's grandparents. You also have Chaske Spencer from Amazon Prime's The English as her uncle. I quite enjoyed seeing them. I think they're pretty good. You also have a lot of, basically every episode has an opening flashback, which is regarding the Echo's ancestors and how they kind of interact with like affecting her powers and whatnot. And I think on one hand, that kind of stuff like bogs down the series a little bit because it feels like very origin story, especially in the beginning half. But I think it's a bit more fulfilling, towards the end. Ultimately, again, it's a pretty low stakes series where it's 5 episodes, about 4 hours long. Doesn't really, I think, surprise you from any plot perspectives. But I think like one of those flashbacks, which was like the silent black and white, like Western one, that was really well done. And I think the family resonance stuff, particularly between Echo and her grandmother, I think that's done the best. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think this series would probably have been served better if it came out, like the immediate aftermath of Hawkeye. But after like the 18 months Marvel has had, I mean, there's just a lot of apathy, and like this is a series that people might have actually been kind of excited about because it's the first Marvel series to get a TVMA rating, the equivalent of an R-rated MCU thing, and it's certainly more violent, more grisly in the action than the past MCU. I think you see more blood. You see more like clear like death, and the opening fight scene you get in the first episode where Daredevil shows up, that's like really intense. I think the train set piece is pretty good. The stuff at the roller rink, I think, is probably the best of anything you get from like a visual action set piece, But I think there'd be a lot more excitement for that kind of thing. Again, kind of harkening back to the Netflix Marvel era. If this was coming at a different time, again, we're coming off Secret Invasion. We're coming off the Marvels being the lowest grossing MCU movie in history, with or without inflation. It's a tough time for audience investment, and a character like Echo, a series about Echo or movie that for that matter, probably not getting greenlit at this time. This was greenlit at a different time when things were going, differently, and it was about more. And you look at the state of the MCU shows, I think this is better than a few of them, but it's not like as excellent as the high end stuff either. So yeah, I kind of understand why they wanted to get it out the door, but when the expectations are as low as they were coming in, I am a bit pleasantly surprised just because of how it handles, I think, some of the cultural stuff that sets it apart and makes it unique. So yeah, ultimately, I don't think there's a whole lot more to really latch onto about it. Daredevil Born Again, we know that show was, there's new hirings and was basically completely redone and reworked after what was previously filmed was not deemed good enough. And I think more than anything, the MCU probably going to make a lot less shows from what we understand, but they're actually going to make them in a more traditional manner with a full showrunner and a full writer's room, and not just trying to create everything in editing and keeping the creative vision directly at the hands of the studio. So positive takeaway overall, but ultimately I think like we kind of know like this whether this was amazing or not, like this wasn't not going to change the fortunes of Marvel. Deadpool 3 will have I think important say in that matter, and certainly original stuff to come, such as the Fantastic Four reboot, will have a lot to say as well. But that's Echo. It's just okay. But yeah, let me know. What'd you think of it? Were you super hyped for it? I can't imagine too many people were super excited to check it out. But what'd you think? I mean, I think Wilson Fisk, as portrayed by D'Onofrio, I actually kind of enjoy the presence of like his hulking yet kind of sensitive portrayal. On the other hand, I feel like he might have been Wally pipped by the portrayal of Kingpin in Across the Spider-Verse on the animated front, so I'm not too sure. But yeah, let me know what you think of Echo. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.